I have to say, first of all, I haven't seen everything you've done, but I thought this is probably the best. I just thought your performance was outstanding.
Of the one film of mine you've seen,
no,
I thought this was the best.
No, I've seen quite a lot of them,
yeah.
but it was very good. Congratulations.
No, thanks.
I wonder when you were talking to people about you know, this film when you were doing it, what would you tell them about it and the character? Because I know there were certain sort of parameters around talking about it, but what would you say?
I guess you would describe it as I play ringleader of a small group of con men, show up in L.A., pull a con, unwittingly it's against a sort of L.A. crime lord, who's played by Dustin Hoffman. So Dustin has one of our guys killed, and then says, well, rather than kill the rest of you, why don't you guys then pull a grift or a con from me? And that's sort of, the movie kind of takes off from that point. And Andy Garcia is there observing the whole thing, and you're never really quite sure what his motivation is. I don't think I gave it away there, did I?
No, that was great.
No.
I wonder, you know, as one writer looking at another writer's work, where does this sort of, and you obviously read a lot of scripts that aren't your own,
Yeah.
where does this script sort of measure up? It's his first screenplay.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the cast that's ensembled, and not just the you know, me, Rachel, Dustin, and Andy, but you look at Morris Chestnut, Luis Guzman, Donald Logue, Paul Giamatti. It's really a pretty incredible ensemble, and I think all the credit has to go to Doug Jung's screenplay, because, you know, it was such a fun read. As much fun as it was to see the finished film, the read was that much fun, and the dialogue was so great. And I think, you know, when you have Jamie Foley at the helm of this kind of material, people who were fans of Glengarry, where again he took a great ensemble and made a very cool movie, I think people were like, oh, you want to be a part of something like that.
Many movies, I guess, maybe the majority, insofar as their character pieces, are about character being revealed. Most of the people here are kind of more like glittering surfaces, and we don't, your character possibly we know more about or discover more about. We have a little bit of a flashbacky thing about maybe something with his mother, but for the most part we don't know much about these characters. Is that appealing sometimes as an actor to do something where you don't get a big...
Without a doubt, yeah. It was a welcome relief in a way for me to play a part that wasn't a variation, or a character that I couldn't draw from my own personality. I had to create this character from scratch, and also the fact that they have no history, and even though there are great character scenes, certainly with Dustin and I, at no point are we really revealing anything about one another, because the idea of the con man is he lies to everyone all the time. So there is no real guy at any point there, because there's always the new character or incarnation that he's presenting to whoever needs to be conned in the room at that time.
Oh, I wonder about working with Dustin Hoffman, watching those scenes, which I think are fantastic. There seem to be emotions flickering across everybody's faces in a sort of subtle kind of way. It felt more like watching people be than people act, which I guess is what acting is supposed to be. But tell me about working with Dustin Hoffman. Is that inspiring?
It was the highlight of my career to date, and I think those scenes, the best work I've done and the work I'm most proud of, and the most fun I've ever had on a film set, because Dustin's character had to sort of be reshaped from what was in the original draft, and we did this rehearsal period where Dustin was improvising and trying to find how he was going to create a physical threat, because he didn't want to use a weapon, and he's not a big guy yet. He needed to find that way to intimidate me physically. So to get a chance to work with, you know, Dustin Hoffman, who I was a huge fan. I mean, Graduate, Midnight Cowboy, two films that made me want to make movies when I was in film school. So to work with that guy and watch him create another one of these, you know, truly unique Dustin Hoffman characters was pretty awesome and usually hysterical.
Well, how much of was that happening in the moment? I mean, I read a version of the screenplay, and certainly a lot of the stuff he directs at you was not in that screenplay.
No, yeah, that all, I mean, most of the, obviously the plot points were in the script, but the stuff, the sort of, let's say, the color of Dustin's character, or the physical tics and his not his hobbies, but whatever it is that motivates his attraction for all people, was Dustin's creation. So
But was some of that standing there in the moment as you were shooting? Because he directs
no,
physical...
a lot of it was done during the rehearsals beforehand, where he started to shape it. Then once he got a grasp of the character and knew what this guy was going to be, when we shot, he basically, a lot of the scenes were rewritten based on his rehearsals and ad-libs earlier. But even then, with the cameras rolling, he would play with little things, more so to, I think, kind of get a different reaction out of Rachel and myself.
And he got a different reaction out of...
With Rachel, I mean, it was really, there was one take where he really threw her, and that's a take that Jamie used. And at the time, now we've kind of gotten used to it. At the time, it was really effective and powerful.
I wonder, the look of the film, a film set in LA, we've all seen many films set in LA, and this is obviously familiar to some degree, but there's also something unfamiliar about it. I wonder, what could you say about that? I mean, it does seem almost like LA is so overshot, but here's a film that seems to create some different look.
Yeah, I think the thing that Jamie did with this film was, originally it was set in New York. I think then it would have been sort of a more typically noir film, using, I think even though so many of the noir films were in the 40s were shot in L.A., they were sort of, it was black and white and a lot of night stuff. Jamie, when it came to L.A., said, anything that's written for a night scene, I want to be day. And because these are con men and not traditional criminals, they can be out during the daylight and interacting with other people because no one really knows what they're up to. So he embraced the blue skies and the sunshine and the palm trees and all that. I think the fact that Jamie lives here, is a filmmaker, he said, it was great to finally shoot in places that he had observed and always thought, that would be a great location for a movie. He finally got to put some of those things up on the screen.
Well, you mentioned the film noir connection. I was asking him about it, and he claims not to even barely know what film noir is because he's not a film student. I don't know whether that's... But it's hard not to think of film noir in reference to a film with this subject matter that almost begins as seeming like it's a dead man's flashback.
Yeah.
So you thought about film noir?
Oh, I definitely did. And I'm really happy that it wasn't shot in New York as originally planned, because you could have seen, when you read the script and you picture it in New York, you see the back alleys, fire escapes, guys in, dark doorways and that whole thing. So maybe the fact that Jamie didn't know those films, never thought to reference them. I don't know.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I guess often scripts are about revealing character and gradually revealing character. This seems like it's sort of about not revealing character except in very subtle ways. Was that almost appealing to do something that... You don't get big emotional scenes, do you, where you say, I suffered during my childhood in this?
That's exactly it. I mean, noir is a style, and in noir, people are mysterious and they remain mysterious. And you never find out, this person's a criminal at the end because, I came from a really bad family, and my dad beat me, and my mom drank, and I was raped. It doesn't really, that doesn't really happen. So they begin a mystery and they end a mystery, and that's fun to play.
Well, you obviously read a lot of material, you get offered a lot of scripts. Well, where did this rank in the scheme of things? Obviously you wanted to do it, but was it unusually literate or witty or any of the things that scripts usually are?
It was definitely unusually literate and witty and just had very clever, fast-paced dialogue. It was the kind of like repartee that was like His Girl Friday or something has. It was like an old-fashioned noir style, but set in modern America. And you rarely read scripts that are that... Well, first of all, have that many words. It's very wordy, which is fun for an actor. We like words.
As a British actor coming to work in America, did you have any apprehension at all about going for a part in what is sort of essentially a kind of noir film? It doesn't seem like a natural match, does it? I mean, you do a great job in it, but...
For a British person to be a noir, I've got like a little noir part of my soul. I always have. So I've watched hundreds of noir movies, and I can get that. I can feel noir like that.
Were you involved in creating her look? Because one of the things in the movie is we don't really actually know what she looks like, particularly, do we? Because she sort of changes and shifts and...
Yeah. I was involved. I wanted her to look... Again, it's like noir style of dressing. It's like structured clothes that are quite body shaping, very feminine, but not like showing flesh, not sort of tarty in any way. Just classic. It's like classic femme fatale kind of glamour.
particularly enjoyed the scenes with Dustin Hoffman, you and Edward Burns and Dustin Hoffman. And in those scenes, there's this, I don't know, emotion flickering backwards and forwards without it being made palpable, as it were, or exposed. And there were these emotions flickering across your face and Edward's face. What was it like working with them or doing those scenes? Because there's almost a lot. I'd read a version of the script and it didn't look a lot like what I saw.
Sure.
And it's almost as if it got rather personal. It seems as if it was all...
Well, that's what you want to happen in a movie, is that stuff happens that you don't need lines. I mean, that's the great thing about film, is that you can say stuff without speaking. What happened was what happened. What happened was what you saw. You get Dustin Hoffman with you in a room and just things happen. He's dangerous. He's dangerous, and I mean that as a compliment.
Well, it almost seems like that he kind of... There's a point where he says stuff about Edward's physical appearance. I mean, not critical exactly, but he talks about it being a pretty boy and the shape of his butt and all that.
Yeah, he was improvising. That's not anything that's in the script. He's dangerous. He pushes buttons, and he was playing somebody who was a manipulator. So he's uncompromising. He plays that character to the hilt, and he's a character who messes with people. So he messed with you.
So does that feel like that's a fun day? I got to work with Dustin Hoffman today.
Yeah. I learned about how really brilliant actors work. They go out of their safety zone and they make everyone else go out of their safety zone, and then that's when magic can happen.
How often do you get a chance to do that in movies, do you think, these days?
Well, I've never worked with anybody as good as Dustin before, so how often, it depends how often you get to work with a screen legend, I suppose. I got to work with him again in the last year, so I had two goes with Dustin.
What did you work with him again?
Runaway Jury. It's a Grisham novel where he plays a good guy. He plays this benign, idealistic Southern lawyer. It's a courtroom, Grisham. Courtroom drama.
James Foley has done great work with actors before, of course, but yet looking at his films, very often they seem that he's very concerned about the look of things and the placement of the camera. I suppose I might have imagined from the outside that he wasn't very responsive to actors, and yet Dustin Hoffman, including everybody else, has said actually he likes actors.
He loves actors. Oh no, he loves actors. That's what is such a good cocktail about Jamie, is that he's got style, and he's very interested in the style of a movie, which I think can be important, particularly for this subject matter. But he loves actors. Yeah, he loves actors, and he loves talking to them. He loves the process. He's completely interested every step of the way.
So the camera angle never got in the way of...
No. Absolutely not.
I wonder, having made the film and then going and seeing the finished thing, were there any surprises for you? Because it was an incredibly dense script. I know what I read wasn't probably a final version, but it was an incredibly dense script and hard to keep in place, and things like a jigsaw with all these different people doing their different bits. Was it surprising to see the finished film?
Well, it's always surprising to see a finished film, but not especially. No, not especially.
But what do you think about it, sort of ultimately? I mean, are you thrilled to have made it? Happy with the film?
Yeah. I think it is what it was on the page. I think it's better than it was on the page, actually. I think it's a clever little twisty-turny plot. There's always a couple of steps ahead of you, and then there's this resolve at the end. The jigsaw pieces get put together in the puzzle. It's a style piece. It's not a profound... It's meant to be entertaining. It's a fun, escapist ride into a kind of slick noir world where you're watching people who are actually criminals, but are kind of fun to be in the company of because they have a certain amount of charm and character and wit.
People have made comparisons with The Usual Suspects, of course, I guess. Does that seem like a valid comparison to you, for people to place it in terms of would I like this movie, would I not like this movie?
I guess, yes. I think it's a little... Was The Usual Suspects funny? Was it kind of comedic? I suppose it was, yeah. Yeah, I suppose. I'm not very good at that kind of, pitch thing. I'm not sure. I don't know.
How about the LA setting? I mean, I feel like we've all seen LA many, many times in a movie, and yes, there's something that seems sort of familiar and different about this. Were you conscious of that while you were making the film, that you were in unusual locations or it was being shot in a particular way?
More when I saw the movie, I saw in LA that I personally didn't know, a downtown LA, which is kind of seedy and glamorous, and it's not the kind of Rodeo Drive and Palm Tree kind of rich world of LA. It's downtown, there's these Art Deco buildings, it's like grungy alleyways, seedy bars. I think it was a really kind of glamorous LA that I thought was it was new to me. I haven't seen that too much in films.
Edward Burns was talking about the scenes that you did with Dustin Hoffman as well, and he talked about Dustin Hoffman sort of sometimes zeroing in on you. Did he sometimes zero in on Ed as well? Did it feel like that there were these scenes that were coming out differently every time?
Yeah, Dustin never does the same thing twice. So yeah, he has like an infinite variety of ways to play a scene, and he would never do it. So yeah, every take is different with Dustin. He was zeroing in on anything.
Sounds frightening, but it
Fabulous.
Very well.
No, it's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Well, you're braver than I am. Thank you very much.
Okay,
that was
thank
great.
you. Thank you. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, Simon.
Bye. I wanted to begin with, just looking at the film, one imagines the script, as indeed the film is, must have seemed incredibly witty, literate, complex. Was that what got your interest initially in this project?
You know, you get scripts, and most scripts have problems, like most films have problems. And sometimes the first act is weak, and then it gets better, and the first two acts are good, and then the third act. This script was structured, and then I looked into the writer, Doug Young, and I found he's new. And I was really surprised that, you know, anyone could write a script that not only had the wit that this had, but that it had a form to it. It had an originality, I thought. And then I heard that Jamie Foley was, he had called me, and I had loved Glenn Ross, because I had done another David Mamet play into a film, and I thought he was much more successful, because it's very hard to take dialogue, you know, four-wall dialogue kind of, and then make it filmic, and he did. So I started to try to imagine what he would do with the script, and we were just having lunch, and the actors and myself, Rachel Wise and Andy Garcia and Ed Burns, and one of the things we were agreeing on, because we've seen the film, is that none of us, when reading the script, even though we thought the script worked and it was witty and everything, none of us could visualize what Foley did with this, and rhythmically and with the colors. I mean, it's one of the rare experiences I've ever had where, you know, you've read the script a few times, you've done the movie, and now you go look at it and you go, whoa. You know, it's a tribute to Mr. Foley.
I wonder with the character you play, what did the script tell you about him, and what did the script not tell you about him? What were the things you sort of created from the ground up, if that makes sense, in terms of his look and his manner, and what did the script tell you?
Everything was created from the ground up, because he was written in a somewhat generic fashion, meaning that he was like a 300-pound heavy, literally and figuratively, and he was kind of a mob guy and hung out, ex-boxer or something, and I immediately thought of Jesse Ventura. He's a very reputable man, but he's an ex-wrestler. And so when Jamie Foley called me, I said, "Are you sure you haven't called the wrong person?" You know, because he said, "Well, let's just meet." And Jamie and myself and Doug Young, we met in the office, and we sat for hours saying. And I said, "So you don't care about the physical thing?" And Jamie said, "No." He said, "I want the menace. I want to have a sense of the danger." And we started from that. So how can myself, you know, with my, you know, slim stature, you know, convey this thing that this big guy did? And when Doug Young said, "I'd like to also retain the sexual ambiguity," and that was the entrance, in a sense, because I thought he had done time. I thought he was an ex-convict, and I'd spent some time with people and had been in prison on another project. And one of the things I learned is that sex many times is used as a weapon to intimidate. It doesn't have anything to do with sex or love. And that's where I you know, and from there, the look, everything seemed to come from that. Because I thought, you know, he thought of himself as a sexy guy.
He is obviously full of threat and menace, and yet, with a sort of little brief exception where he kind of bangs someone up with his head, we don't really see him do anything terrible, which again seems an unusual choice. Was that very conscious that he would be? Because I kept expecting something to happen, which meant that he always semed threatening rather than we've got that out of the way. Was that a very conscious choice?
Yes. I mean, one of the things that happened in that meeting was I said, you know, I'm a little guy, I can't outdo Cagney. You know, Cagney always grabbed a guy and slapped him around. I said, I can tell you things I don't want to do. I don't want to do that. You know, I don't want to have to be physically threatening. And I had met, I'm coming from my own experiences, we're all trained to do. And I had met people in my life who were not physically intimidating, but who were very intimidating just from behind the eyes. And you felt you don't want to cross them. They can have you hurt. They can get you hurt. And I thought that was this guy.
I wonder, you mentioned James Foley having thought that he did such a good job with Glengarry Glen Ross. What do you, obviously as an actor of vast experience and ability, what do you want from a director? And what did James Foley, is it just to stand back and let you do your thing, or something else?
No, but it's the appearance of that. It's like a parent. I mean, the little kid wants to run. And the little kid wants to run away from the parents. Doesn't really want to, wants to know they have the freedom to run, and they know that the parent will be there just in time. And I think that's kind of an ideal director. I think there's two kinds of directors, basically, after all these years. They like us or they don't like us. And when they like us, they kind of want to be surprised. And if they just have to tolerate us, they kind of have a vision in their head and an image of their head of not only your character in the film, but almost every scene. And they want you to fill it in as they've already filled it in. And that's not much fun. It's much more fun to be able to feel that the director is entreating you to surprise him, to take him someplace he hadn't thought of. And that's what Jamie did for all of us. Every single take. I mean, the more outrageous we were, the more he came out and said, I like it. I mean, he doesn't have to put it in the movie, but he's creating a freedom.
Did Edward Byrne seem like a worthy adversary for you and for your character?
Well, you know, he works similarly to the way I work. We don't think of character. I can only speak for myself, but I mean, I think of character in terms of the look, in terms of the costume, and certain givens by the writer. But then I'm behind that. It's like when you put on clothes in your closet. You don't really wear a tuxedo, but when you put it on, it alters you. And so I let this stuff kind of alter me, but I make sure and the important thing, I think, is to never lose yourself, so that I'm purposefully not acting toward Ed Burns' character. I'm trying to relate to Ed. And he worked similarly because he wasn't relating to this thing called the King. He was relating to me. And the rapport that we had, we just let it live. And because we did like each other so much, which we did, I mean, we had almost a familial kind of rapport, it freed us to really mess with each other, because you can really get angry with another person if you like them, because you know that what's behind all this behavior, all this negative behavior that you're doing in a scene is that you want the other person to be good, and that person wants you to be good, so that you're it's like two boxers that shit out of each other, that beat the crap out of each other. And when the round's over, because you're there to make it as exciting as you can.
They were thrilling scenes to watch.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
We've met. Yes.
I wonder, this I believe is Doug Young's first script.
Mm-hmm.
As an actor who obviously receives a lot of material and weighs it up, where did this script come in sort of the scheme of things? Obviously you wanted to do the movie, but is it unusual to get a script that's this literate, this...
I didn't know it was his first script when I read it. I just looked at it as, a good piece of material that was, very thought out and taking chances and fresh. But I only came to learn that it was his first script in the junket.
So was it an easy decision to make, to sign on for
Fairly
this?
easy, although I had, because the director, there's always an important decision, and I liked James's work very much, and the cast was pretty much in place. That there were some things that needed to be addressed for my character, for me to be able to make sort of the leap to play him, only because the way he functioned in the story wasn't making a lot of sense to me. But I had ideas about how I thought, what I would want the character, how I think he should function. They agreed, so we rewrote some things, and I jumped in.
I guess the arc of most characters in most movies, or the path of most movies, is about revealing character. The characters in this movie don't really reveal character in a way, do they? Except very subtly, maybe. There aren't scenes of emotional outbursts or explanation. Was that appealing? That it was? They're more sort of glittering surfaces, these people, aren't they, really? And it's really hard to work them out. Is that appealing to an actor to do something like that, as opposed to something full of big emotional scenes? Or?
Every character, if you're stimulated by him, if it strikes your fancy and stimulates your creativity and your imagination, then it propels you to say, I want to play this part. I don't think there's anything particular in terms of one thing might stimulate you more. It's all individual to the actor per se. What stimulates me can mean absolutely nothing to somebody else, and it probably does. I mean, that the one thing that really stimulated my imagination with this character was the fact that he was from Tampa, Florida, or that I assumed he was from Tampa. And that was enough for me to say, oh, I want to play this guy. I got a guy. I want to play a guy from Tampa.
What did you?
So I said that's pretty. To someone else would go, Tampa. Who cares? I've never been there. What does that mean? I don't. But to me, it meant a whole wealth of things.
Well, you knew this backstory for him once you.
Yeah, once I said, he's from Tampa. Oh, okay, I know who this guy is. And that for me. So for others, it might not mean anything.
I wondered to people in your life, if they were asking, you were making this movie and you were saying to them, this is the movie I'm making, and they said, well, what's it about? What were you saying to people?
It's a movie about con artists and the nature of the con, and if you're not careful, you might be conned yourself into thinking something that you shouldn't be thinking in the movie.
That's a good way of putting it. You mentioned James Foley, and you had an interest in working with him. What was it that interested or excited you about James?
Well,
Foley?
his movies that I've seen him do, that I responded to, At Close Range and Glengarry Glen Ross, and there was things about the texture of his movies that I said, oh, I like this guy's work a lot, and I could see how he could be very good. The cinematographer was a good friend of mine that I've worked with in the past, Juan Ruiz Anchilla, so I knew about their collaboration together because they had done those two movies together and others. And then the cast, so that was kind of like a lot of things that said, looks like there's going to be something interesting here. So I was, when you see that many people attracted to a piece of material, you sort of anticipate the material is going to hold up, because by its very nature, you're saying, if Eddie's responding to it and Rachel's responding to it and Dustin's responding to it, and you feel, well, there's going to be something interesting on the page, and there was.
I wonder, at this point in your career, with as much experience as you've had or have, what is it you look for from a director? Is it for a director to sort of stand back and let you do your thing? Or?
No, a real collaboration, enthusiasm to discover together, and to be the creative process to be invigorating,
And how did it measure up with James Foley?
Oh, fantastic. He was very enthusiastic, and he created a very good sense of space to work. He was very responsive to the work. He lets you contribute. He lets you improvise. He lets you come up with he's receptive to everything it's important to have your actors on top of it, sort of invigorated by the process. And in order to do that, you have to you open the doors of input. Let them come in and show you what they got. And you can orchestrate that, and just it's all raw material ultimately until you take it into the editing room and go, now what works here? What can I pick up? What's the best of what we did? And James was very open to that. So I enjoyed working with him a lot.
Dustin Hoffman was saying, when I spoke with him on Saturday, that he thinks directors tend to divide into those who like actors and those who don't like actors. And James Foley is one of the ones who likes actors.
Yeah, maybe it could be true, There are directors that come in with everything worked out. In other words, this is my movie, this is what I feel, this is what I need, this is what I need you to do. No, this is what I need you to do. So that's probably in that realm of saying that probably don't like actors too much, And And there's other ones who are saying, this is what we're doing, this is the kind of movie we're doing, and is open to ideas, and because ultimately the best idea should be in the movie, because we're trying to all make a better movie, you know.
I could imagine from looking at James Foley's other films, and from this one, which looks so polished, and it's a beautiful looking film, that actually he was all about the camera angle and the lighting, and obviously he's concerned about that, but at the same time seems to create a space where where actors get to do that acting.
Well, there's a place for everything, you know. The form is content also, you know, and there's a visual style that you feel a movie should have, and that's all good and dandy. But ultimately, if the behavior of the movie and the performances of the movie don't have resonance, and there's not real chemistry or real people talking to each other, and you don't feel that people are coming alive, it's hard to continually fabricate that in the editing room by razzle dazzle.
I wonder if you've seen the finished film and how that sort of compared with your sense of it, you know, from the script, because it's a film of sort of jigsaws and bits together and backwards and forwards, and so it's
easier to follow as a movie as it was as a script. I mean, the script was dense. I mean, you really had to go, just go back. Oh God, I got to start all over again. And you go, you know, that was complicated that way. At one point, I said to James, we're in your hands, because you know it was dense that way. It's to think, you know, you really got to think through it, you know. People not throwaway stuff. It's like the stuff that you think is a throwaway. You got to come back to it and go, oh God, yeah, something must have gone down that I missed, you know.
So people could see it twice.
I think so, yeah.
I wondered that in being written about early on, and I guess people like to make comparisons or place something, it's been compared quite a lot with The Usual Suspects. Do you think it's a useful comparison?
Well, it's in that genre, you know. It's in the genre, you know. Con men and heist, in that case, gone astray, I guess, right? But it's in that, you know, eccentric characters who are grouped together to pull off a certain specific type of heist or con, and the characters themselves are as fascinating, hopefully, and most of the time, as the con itself. You know, because that kind of lifestyle doesn't attract the sort of run-of-the-mill characters, you know.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. I wanted to begin with, I'm sure you've been talking about this for 3 days, but thinking about the script of this film, I believe it was Doug Young's first script. Given the material you see, where does this stand in terms of, is this remarkable for someone to come up with a script early on with this much sort of depth and wit, and it's so literate and all those sort of things?
I think it's remarkably unusual, and one of the things I'm really conscious of is that he wrote this script totally on his own. It wasn't pitched to a studio and developed and having the mark of 10,000 hands involved with it. He just sat in a room by himself and did it, and when I read it, it was kind of complete already, which is a very unusual thing to happen. But I felt lucky wading through a pile of stuff that is 99% junk, and this kind of really stood out.
How about you? Obviously, attracted a great cast, because we've seen you've got a great cast. But I wonder, it was sort of almost interesting to me thinking about the film from the point of view of most actors sort of seem to come on screen and they're gradually required to reveal character, as it were, and that's a sort of usual process in a film. This isn't really so much about revealing character. I mean, they're all sort of glittering surfaces to some degree, all these people, aren't they? It's a big game. And was that something that was therefore exciting to actors? It seems contrary to what we usually see them doing.
Yeah, it's, oddly enough, it's something that we never talked about, and I never really consciously thought about until after it was over, and some people respond to it like that. But I realized in retrospect, maybe that's part of what I was drawn to, was that the movie was sort of traveling like this locomotive down the track with the plot, and that the revelation of character had to happen sort of subtextually and had to happen like while you weren't looking. So the movie never stops and defines character. It just sort of, you know, action is character in the most pure form, I guess.
Dustin Hoffman, who I spoke to on Saturday, sort of gave the impression that he just read this and jumped on it. What did he tell you, or what do you think it was about the part, about the film, about working with you? What was it that made him so?
Me. No, actually, the evolution of his creation of his character was the unusual experience. Part of the experience was because the film was set in New York originally, and his character was written as a gigantic 300-pound monster of a man with a cigar and owned a boxing gym in New York. But when we switched to LA, the character made no sense, but somehow Dustin had become aware of the script and knew that I wanted to change that part, and so he was interested in talking about it. And myself and the writer met with Dustin and just started improvising, throwing out crazy ideas, and he would act them out, and the writer would go home and write the scene, come back, we'd rehearse it and change it. And so the character was really born out of an improvisation, starting with Dustin. So by the time he got around to shooting it, it was kind of second skin to him. But that was an unusual way to happen, and I give a lot of credit to the writer to be able to roll with the punches and integrate it into the script without it being a sore thumb.
What does an actor of Dustin Hoffman's vast experience, and what does he want from a director? What does he need from you?
Direction. It's interesting. My experience with a lot of actors that are very experienced has always been the same, that only because it so happens that my process, which is for better or for worse, is to start everything, rehearsing before we begin shooting, and on the day of shooting is to let the actors come in to the location, the set, whatever it is, and say action, and just see what they do on their own, instinctually, and then to start pushing and prodding, well, how about a little bit here, a little bit there, blah, blah, blah. But to direct around what is their instinct, because my favorite thing is to say you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And yeah, you can force an actor to go a certain place so that it's cool for your shot that you thought out in advance, but are they going to be believable doing it? So I tend to do the opposite and rehearse the actors, try to mold it in a certain way, and then start thinking about where I'm going to put the camera to capture what I'm seeing and what seems most interesting to me. So in that case, the actor, like Dustin, all his experience is totally integrated with what I'm doing, and he invites being directed on that basis.
I wonder about actors often talk. I haven't spoken with Edward Burns yet, but actors often talk about acting being a bit like a tennis game, and if you play with a better player, you do better work. It struck me that this was some of the best work that Edward Burns has done, and in the scenes that he's with Dustin Hoffman, they're sort of remarkable scenes, and the sort of emotion flitting across his face, shifting and changing in a way that I've certainly never seen him do before. Do you think is that a valid? I mean, what do you think of Edward Burns' performance here, and how much was that inspired by working with Dustin Hoffman?
I think, and part of my thing about being a director is that there are certain actors who I see on screen and I just connect to, feeling as if I want to direct them, and also there is that challenge that I see something in them that has not yet been on screen. So I really wanted him for the part, I believed in it, and then when Dustin sort of got thrown in front of him, it's part of what I like about Eddie Burns just as a person, which I judge a lot about, is that he's humble but will step up to bat when something's in his face. And I happen to be most interested as a filmmaker in trying to capture that subtle flash of emotion, as you say, and kind of surprise. And a lot of it was that the rehearsal and improv that I talked about with Dustin, we did without Eddie, so that he wouldn't necessarily be all that comfortable and familiar with what Dustin was going to do. So a lot of it is very real, of Eddie reacting as if, what the hell's going on? Which is what was exactly the character was feeling, what the hell is going on.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about Rachel Weisz. Obviously from the outside, it seems an unlikely choice to go with a British actress to play the character who seems so quintessentially American, in a way. Was that something you thought long and hard about before casting Rachel?
No, as a matter of fact, in all honesty, this is the first time I thought about it, you saying it, because I didn't, I met a lot of actresses, and there was just no contest when I finally met her. But before she opened her mouth, I wanted her to do it, and I never came up. She wanted to play it with as an American, but I never really necessarily thought she had to be, because she could be nomadic and come from anywhere. So that was never an issue.
I wonder about the look of the film. The film obviously is set in LA, and yet it seems both familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. Is it hard to shoot a film in LA? I guess most of us have seen so many LA.
Yeah, no, something I very much wanted to do, because I liked, first of all, setting the film in an environment that was contrary to expectations about a crime drama or dark alleys and grainy New York streets. And also because I've lived here for 20 years and I've never made a film here, I was very hungry to kind of present a certain part of LA as much as I could. good that was something that I was familiar with, that wasn't derived from previous movies or television shows, but something which was the environment that I live in day to day. And it kind of intrigued me that these guys could be sitting at the next table, and given that they're con artists, which are kind of like actors, and LA is full of actors sitting at the next table, that it seemed really kind of amused me on a certain level. That's the most important thing, amusing me.
The film, in sort of early, I guess most films get placed in some way, and this film has been compared with Usual Suspects. Does that, for people who won't know much about this film, is that a useful comparison to compare it with that?
You know, you make the film, and it's always, in my experience, I'm absolutely isolated from any other films, and I hate movies that make reference to other movies. So it becomes like a marketing thing where people start saying that, and maybe a studio kind of promotes it so that it's somewhat contextualized for the audience. But to me, I don't see much connection other than both of them have kind of twists and turns. But it's the emotional stuff between the characters that I'm always turned on by, and what happens to be the genre it's in or not in is something that never occurs to me.
I guess it's hard to look at a movie with this setting and this sort of subject and not think, say, of film noir. Do you not think of film noir?
No, I don't. You know, I'm not all that film educated, oddly enough, and I even made a Jim Thompson book, After Dark, My Sweet, which everyone thought was film noir, but I never knew that until it was done and somebody started putting it in that category. I just don't reference things like that because the characters don't know they're in a film noir or not. They're in a movie. I mean, they're in a story. And I hate to be conscious of any kind of genre like that.
Well, maybe that's good because it means the film doesn't seem weighed down with these.
Yeah, I just totally feel like that's for other people to put a label on, but it's not, for me to do with the characters.
Well, what is it? Is your sort of focus while you're making the film, is it about an emotional truth or telling a story?
Totally an emotional thing, and I'm just always looking for an excuse, a movie that where that can be character driven, and where the subtext is my most important thing, where the subtext of what's going on is active and is integral to the story. And in this case, since what people are saying may not necessarily be the truth, the actor has to be able to reveal that to the audience without being obvious about it. But on second viewing, the audience could see it, and it all makes sense, hopefully.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
It was interesting.
Thanks.
Thank you.
As a director, writer, producer, and whatnot, when you initially got the script and started working on the film, did you look at it from a director's standpoint of wanting to sort of help the process along, hiring this cast and whatnot?
I was very fortunate in the first thing I acted in that wasn't my own film was Private Ryan. I knew showing up on that set, I was not going to be making suggestions to Spielberg as to where he might want to put the camera or anything a director might be inclined to do. So since then, I've only looked at scripts when I'm looking at them as an actor. James Foley, I was such a huge fan of Glengarry Glen Ross. When I got the script, before I even opened it, I had my fingers crossed, hoping that I would like it and that there was a part for me in there, because I wanted to work with him so badly.
What was your reaction when you heard Dustin Hoffman was coming on board?
Jamie and I talked about who do we get to play the king. And the part on the page was very different from Dustin physically, but we said, what the hell, let's try it, for very selfish reasons, because we both were such fans who wanted to work with Dustin. When he said yes, I think we were both in shock. And obviously, very, very happy.
So what did you learn from Dustin Hoffman?
For me, I'm in film school. I see Midnight Cowboy, graduate. I'm a fan of Dustin Hoffman, but those are the two of the 5 films that inspired me in film school to say, I want to be a filmmaker. So Dustin's more a hero, an inspiration. So for me to just sit down with the guy and talk to him was a thrill in itself. To actually work with him and get to be creative with him, to help him create this character, for him to help me figure out my character and create my character, it was just, it was one of the great thrills.
Can you talk a little bit about the kissing scene with Rachel Weisz? And what was going through your head as you were making out with this beautiful woman?
Probably just, where
You can be honest on this one.
Yeah, you're just doing your job.
Just doing the job?
Doing a job.
I heard you studied under a magician to perfect your pickpocketing aspect of your role in the film, and I was wondering, I actually have some in my pocket if you'd like to pickpocket by the end, so for you if you'd like.
I could explain to you how to do it.
I'd like to know how to do it.
Well, basically, to pick somebody's pocket, it's all about distraction. So I would distract you and say, oh, that's a really beautiful shirt you have on, let me see. And while I was touching your shirt with my other hand, I'd be picking your pocket. That's like a silly, kind of not a very good example, but it's all about, it's the art of distraction.
Okay.
So I would touch you somewhere else, like I would bump into you, and that's the basic thing that I learned.
Wait, where's my watch?
Yeah.
Did you just take my watch?
Funny enough, the guy who taught me, the magician who taught me pickpocketing, it was a magician who taught me because I couldn't find any real pickpockets, unfortunately, to teach me. He could get your watch off, steal your wallet, and get your belt off. Get that. He'd get your belt off and you wouldn't notice.
So you didn't graduate to that level, I assume?
No, that's like a good, he's devoted a good, like, 20 years to this art.
Have you ever been conned out of anything in your life?
Every day.
Every day?
Yeah.
Do you have any specific examples of things you've been conned out of recently? Money or otherwise?
Oh, God. I get conned out of, like, clean air by Bush. I don't know.
I thought you said Kleenex. I was going to say.
No. And in a little way, what have I been conned out of? A happy childhood. I don't know.
I'm so sorry.
I'm joking.
So sorry. What was it like working with so many men in the film? You were really the only woman in the film.
It was great. I like men a lot. I like their company. The thing I really liked was after about 2 weeks, they began to not treat me like I was a girl anymore. I was like one of the guys. And that was really nice because it was like anthropology. I got to see how men behave when women aren't around. It was like I was like a fly on the wall in a locker room. You know what I mean? I was down at the locker room, and it's kind of fascinating.
So you stopped smoking. I know you're doing yoga and you've stopped smoking. Well, you were smoking throughout the film. What's with that?
Yes, they weren't real cigarettes. They were, herbal cigarettes. Yeah.
Okay, so that was the trick.
Yeah.
So did you pick up any acting or any sort of acting skills or any sort of lessons from Dustin Hoffman or anyone else on the set?
I mean, I wish I could. I learned so much from being around Dustin Hoffman is, a legend. He's like a myth and a legend, and it was such an honor to be working with him. I felt like I learned a lot from him. I suppose the main thing I learned from him was not to play things safe. He never plays things safe. He goes out of his safety zone. And he's dangerous. He doesn't stick to the script. He improvises. He makes stuff up. He doesn't really let you get complacent or calm.
I actually had a Dustin dollar from the film.
Oh, a Dustin dollar. Look
and I
at
actually
that.
have an Ed Burns dollar too. if you'd
Dustin
like.
Hoffman for president. Do you put
And here's an Ed Burns.
your presidents on dollars?
We do put our presidents, former
Oh, so
presidents.
Bush. Oh, former. You have to be dead. Okay.
Yes.
Because I was going to say Dustin Hoffman for president.
Yes, this could work.
Good idea.
You never know.
Dustin for president.
So anyway, thank you very, very
Thank
much.
you. Okay.
You're more beautiful in person, definitely. Thank you. How many times did you have to read the script to this movie for it finally to make sense to you? Full sense as far as the whole script working?
I gave up once I figured out my part. I gave up on making the whole thing make sense.
So you didn't actually read the entire script?
Oh yeah, of course, many times. But I said I gave up once I figured out. We changed a lot of stuff with my part, how it functioned in the story, before we started. And then there was the rest of it I left in James Foley's hands.
How was your part initially versus the part that we will be seeing when we go to see the movie in theaters?
I can't spoil it, it'll spoil it for the audiences, but it functioned differently than what's in the movie, That's all I can say, because if I say anything else, why see the movie?
Now, I know you're a collector of hats, and I was just curious, did you choose the hat that you wore in the film?
Yeah, the ones in the movie are mine, yeah.
They're yours. So you don't have to take anything off the set? Was there anything you ended up removing from the set that's now yours that wasn't yours before the movie started?
Well, I was tempted to take the old seersucker suits, but they were pretty old and I wasn't the first guy who wore them, so I left them behind. But I took my hats back.
What was it like working with James Foley?
Over cigars, I took those home with him.
The leftover cigars. What was it like working with James Foley?
James was great. James is very supportive with the acting process. He's very enthusiastic, and he creates a great space to work in. And it's a very complicated movie to direct. It's very dense in terms of the plot lines, and he did a beautiful job. But mostly, I just remember his enthusiasm for the work, and that's infectious to us.
Have you ever been conned out of anything in your life, money or anything else?
Yes, I've been conned out of my time.
Your time?
Yeah, a lot of times. That's something that's just somehow you don't get. That's an easy one sometimes to get hooked into when someone wastes your time.
Like I hope I'm not doing right now.
No, not at all.
Okay. Now, what was it like working with Dustin Hoffman?
I didn't work with Dustin in the movie, but I worked with him before.
So you didn't talk with him during the making of the movie?
I saw him during the movie, but I saw him outside the movie quite a number of times.
After you read the script, had Ed Burns and the other cast not been involved, do you think you would have been involved in this film?
Depends who the other cast members were, and I like James's work a lot as a director, so that would have been an attractive point. But like I said, they were already involved, so that was.
Well, thank you very much. Good luck with your efforts, and take care. Were you reluctant initially to take such a small role?
No, it wasn't the size of it. It was that it was written for a really big guy, and I just didn't understand why they'd come to me, because he kind of looked like Jesse Ventura in the writing, just physically. And then they said they didn't care about what he looked like physically. But I always just have gone for the part. I mean, even after The Graduate, Midnight Cowboy, in a sense, was a supporting part also.
So as far as improvisation in the film, did you improv anything and everything?
Yeah, but we improv with the writer Doug Young being there in rehearsals, and then he would rewrite accordingly. And then sometimes I would improv when we were shooting, but that's kind of what I always do.
Was your character bisexual in the film?
No, he was trisexual.
In what way was he trisexual?
He liked girls and boys, and he liked to go to dog park too.
Okay, well, thank you very much. How do you feel about the police in Los Angeles and the police in general?
Man, the hardest job in the world. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't want to be in that position. It must be horrible. It must be really difficult. Except this new police chief that we have here is an amazing guy, Bratton. Old Boston Irish guy. But yeah, I'm a corrupt cop, but like my kid needs braces. It's like these guys are making 40, 50 grand a year. They've got the most dangerous job in the universe. You can see where the temptation is to go a little crooked.
As a writer, you're a writer yourself.
Yeah.
How did you feel about the script when you looked at it initially?
I thought it was really great, and what was amazing was Jamie was there with the screenwriter the whole time, just doing stuff. And
do you guys
want
to come in?
Good to see you. How are you?
See you, I'm great.
I can sort of.
He's the friendliest director to writers ever. Like usually directors are like, get out of here, man. But yeah.
It's good. So what was it like working with him on
Awesome.
an ongoing basis?
He's an exciting, excitable, awesome guy.
Were you able to give him any tips on your character?
Hell no, no. He just let us do what we were gonna do, Yeah. So it was really cool. Louis knows how to do what Louis Guzman is. I just want to follow Louis' lead,
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Take care. How did you get involved with the film? I mean, these were some amazing... I mean, not that you're not an amazing actor, but you haven't acted for very long. You were in a film with Dustin Hoffman, Ed Burns, these veterans in the business. How did you get involved, Frankie?
It was a small film that I did about a year ago, almost 2 years ago. It was in Manito. We won a lot of awards. We won the Best Ensemble Cast at Sundance Film Festival. We won awards out in Puerto Rico. We won an award out in Miami. And so I didn't get to get the confidence script till I came out here in L.A., like about a month, 2 months later, and then I met with James Foley. I came down here, but actually I came down here for 4 days, and I met with James Foley, and I read with him, and I read with the other actors, and I got the part. But I didn't know Dustin Hoffman was going to be in it until like 2 weeks later. And I didn't know the whole cast too much. I only knew that Eddie Burns was in it, and Rachel Weisz. And then that's when I started knowing who all the cast was, and then Dustin Hoffman, Andy Garcia. That's an amazing cast, and I was a little nerve-wracked. It was a little nervous for me to see how I would approach Lupus in the film with them, and how could I carry it with them. But then I just looked at it and I said, damn, I'm going to take this chance, and I'm going to give it 110% and do the best I can, and hopefully things will work out.
What's with the name lupus? That's a disease, isn't it?
I don't know. I guess you get looped if you mess with lupus, you know?
Yeah, but did you ask them about that, or you just take the role and run with it?
I just took the role and run with it.
Do you know what lupus is?
Lupus? No, I don't know.
It's a serious disease. It's an inflammatory tissue disease.
I guess in this movie I'm inflammatory. What do you want me to do?
Or even inflammatory.
Inflammatory, right.
So what was like the most amazing moment when, working with some of these incredible actors for you in the film?
Every scene was an amazing moment. Every day I went, it was an amazing moment working with these people. So there was no dull moment. It was great.
What are you going to take from this film that you'll remember forever?
Don't con anybody or you get caught.
Have you ever been conned, and have you ever conned?
No, not that I know of yet. Maybe, I don't know. No.
You haven't conned anyone yet?
No, not yet. No.
Are you planning on conning someone?
Oh, no, that's
So
not
you're
me.
telling me you've never been conned in your life?
No, not in this magnitude.
You're just too smart for that, huh?
You can say that. I'm conning you guys now.
Someone's lying here. You're perfect for this movie. Take care, Frankie, man. Bye-bye. When you initially saw the script, what did you think?
I thought that I loved it because I read the whole thing and I wanted to turn the page. I hate reading scripts. It's a real chore that I feel I have to get through it sometimes and hope there's a germ of an idea. And in this case, I read the damn script and it was complete already, right in my face. And it was the kind of stuff that I love, where there's all sorts of subtext going on and what you see is not really what's happening. And it had a great ending and great parts for actors, and that's what really turns me on.
So you were working with Ed Burns. I'm going to talk about him first, a fellow director and writer. Was he able to give you tips on the movie as far as the progress of the movie?
No, it's funny. Ed and I have talked about that, and we've gone around and done festivals together, and people always ask him. And when I first heard that, it was like an odd sort of thing, because I realized that you would never know that he had directed films before, except that he was very comfortable with the process as an actor. But it was something that was sort of invisible. I wouldn't have minded if he said something, but it just never came up.
So Dustin Hoffman is, I've heard that Dustin Hoffman is a very difficult person to work with on the set. Is that the truth with your case?
Not my experience. I mean, I heard that, but I've heard that about a lot of actors I've worked with, Sean Penn and Al Pacino. But I happen to love what great actors can do, and that's what I'm after from my film, is a close-up of a great actor in a great moment. That's what turns me on. So I think if an actor's working in a film with a director that's their focus, then there's no problem. It's when all of a sudden they find themselves in a film, maybe by their own fault, where their moment in close-up is not what the director's interested in. It's about the planet exploding behind his head. But it's just not where my head's at.
How did you determine, I know Dustin Hoffman was improvising a lot of his character. How did you determine whether to go with what your instinct was telling you and whether to go with Dustin's instincts?
Yeah, he didn't improvise when we shot it. What happened was that the character was written for a big, fat, humongous piece of slab of meat of a guy. And so we changed the characterization of it, and we had rehearsals where he improvised, and the writer went back and then structured scenes and stuff. So by the time we went to shoot it, there was very little improvisation. So we had all the fun before we started shooting.
So hadn't it been Dustin Hoffman, who would it have been?
Oh, nobody. And I actually, there was nobody we ever talked to. He was the actual first person. And so now that it's made, I never can think about anybody else.
Did you really think Dustin Hoffman was going to take such a small role initially?
No, I was shocked by that, pleasantly shocked by that. And now I look at the movie, I realize that it just would not have been what it is. And I love that part of it.
So could you comment on working with Rachel Weisz?
Yeah, I'd say it was a very easy thing to do. It was just great to be able to look at somebody, and when they came to the set, it tickled your eyes. And I think also she got to do something, kind of a twist of her inherent evil that goes really well with her beauty. I like that.
And also with Andy Garcia, what was it like working with him?
Same thing. I just didn't expect to get somebody like that, in a supporting part. So, but once one person signs up, and then the movie has a kind of reputation that maybe it's going to be something that actors will want to be involved with, and all of a sudden, manna falls from heaven.
What's the most difficult setups on the film? Were there any difficult setups for you overall?
No, I mean, every day of shooting a film is a challenge, but when the scene is working and the actors are good, it's never difficult. It's when there's something wrong with the script or the actor just is cast in the wrong way, that's when you get in trouble.
Directors always seem to have problems with budgetary constraints. This movie seemed like a relatively low-budget film. Did you have any budgetary constraints with the film?
Oh, yeah, but that's the same thing, too. I mean, I've made films for like 4 times this budget, and still there's not enough time. Still, you're under constraints. So I don't mind that at all because you know what you're doing going in.
Just one last question.
Sure.
Was Dustin Hoffman's character meant to be a bisexual? I've been reading this in certain critiques, and I'm not quite sure. I watched the film again, and I still wasn't sure.
That's great, because the whole movie's about not being sure about what the hell's going on and what the hell people are thinking about. So I would leave that for the viewer to figure out for themselves, whatever they feel.
Thank you
All right,
very
man.
much, James.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Appreciate
Hey, take care.
it. Okay.
Bye-bye. Why would you decide to write a film about con artists? Have you been conned in your life?
I think I just really liked the opportunity to do a movie that had a lot of twists and turns, and I love like those kind of crime thrillers where the bad guys are the good guys, and you know, the kind of puzzle of the story is always really great to me.
Now there's superstitions throughout the film, and are you a superstitious guy?
Kind of superstitious, but I think everybody's a little superstitious in their own way. It's just we had Ed's character be really superstitious, and it actually comes from like actual real con men superstitions. They actually had that. So
There were loads of changes made on the script that you wrote. How did you feel about these changes? Did you just stand aside because this was one of your first? Was this your first Hollywood script?
Yeah.
So did you just sort of stand aside and let them do their
I
work?
actually made them, so it was nice. I had a good relationship with Foley, and we worked on all those things together. All the changes were collaborative, so I never really felt like it wasn't mine. Or, you know, Dustin's character was like really reworked, and Dustin's, you know, got great ideas, and he's just crazy and enthusiastic, and you just have to like kind of hold on. And
as you were writing the script, did you have specific actors in mind who you wanted to act out the roles?
I always wrote it thinking like it felt like a straight-to-video kind of thing to me. And then when these actors started coming on, I was like, come on, there's no way these guys are going to do it. So no, I mean, to picture that kind of caliber of actor, clearly it was no. I had no one in mind like that.
We did a fantastic job, and I thank you very much. Enjoy the film. Bye-bye.